I'm on a quest to rank every WWE superstar ever in order to create the first ever statistically accurate Mount Rushmore. And today we're going to be turning our heads to the 2019 WWE women's roster. In my last video, we ranked the 2016 women's roster, and you guys actually voted Sasha Banks as the greatest woman of 2016, putting Sasha Banks so far at the top of our all-time WWE leaderboard. Over the coming months, we'll be filling up this leaderboard based on who you guys vote the king and queen of each year in my community section on YouTube, until we have the first ever statistically accurate Mount Rushmore. So of course, be sure to subscribe along for this very exciting journey. Anyways, on to the 2019 women's roster, starting out with Asuka. 2019 was an absolutely incredible year for Asuka, winning the Smackdown women's title in December of 2018 at TLC and holding it for 99 days until March 26 of 2019. In the later half of the year, she would then go on to tag with Kairi Sane as the Kabuki Warriors, capturing the tag gold on October 6, 2019 and holding it for 180 days. One of the absolute best all-time in ring, and her 2019 entrance and music just hits absolutely different. Great win record, and overall just an absolutely decorated year for Asuka, both in the singles and tag division. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to put Asuka all the way up in the S tier. Alexa Bliss. After suffering 2 concussions in just 1 month in 2018, Alexa Bliss returned in the ring at Royal Rumble 2019, although she played 2019 incredibly cautiously, with the majority of her matches being house shows and a noticeable losing record for her in 2019. This was certainly not the strongest year for Alexa Bliss, especially after coming off being champion throughout 2018. However, on Monday Night Raw on August 5th, she won a fatal 4-way match with Nikki Cross against the Iconics, Mandy and Sonya, and the Kabuki Warriors to become the 3rd ever women's tag champs, and she held those titles for 61 days. But with all of that being said, come on now, it's Alexa Bliss, one of the most talented in the ring and just someone who looks like an absolute star. I will still absolutely be having to put Alexa Bliss up in the A tier. Alicia Fox. Alicia Fox in 2019. We're talking about someone who is very much past their prime at this point and practically just jobbed out on non-televised events for the first half of the year before stepping away for personal reasons. And honestly, I think at the best of times, Alicia Fox has never been particularly standout. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting Alicia Fox in the F tier. Up next, we have Bayley. Someone else with great success both in the singles and tag divisions, holding the Smackdown women's title for an astounding 222 days in total in 2019, as well as being the inaugural women's tag team champion along with Sasha Banks, winning it back at Elimination Chamber 2019 and holding it for 41 days. That is 263 days as champion in total in 2019. Oh, and of course not to mention being Miss Money in the Bank. And what did she do with that Money in the Bank, I hear you ask? Of course, she cashed in that same night on Charlotte Flair, who also happened to just win the title, and of course claimed it for herself and became the new SmackDown women's champion. Anyways, we're talking about the hugger gimmick Bayley, which I think was such a fun gimmick. However, she would debut her new look on October 11th, reclaiming her SmackDown women's title that same night on SmackDown. An incredibly successful year for Bayley with an almost perfect win-loss record, and of course capturing all the gold there was to capture. This is without a shadow of a doubt another incredibly easy S tier. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, aka the Iconics. The longest reigning tag champs in 2019 at 120 days, the Iconics were definitely at their peak in this year. After a victory at WrestleMania 35, they would finally claim their first gold in the WWE. However, they were not booked on any pay-per-views for the rest of 2019, other than a failed title opportunity against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross on the SummerSlam kickoff show. As for their tag title reign, there wasn't a whole lot memorable that came from it, other than the fatal 4-way match that they inevitably lost the tag titles in. As I said though in the 2016 video, 2 very fun characters in Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. However, I will be putting them in the B tier. Becky Lynch. We are talking about the woman of the year, the woman of the hour. No one did it like Becky Lynch in 2019. And I mean, where do we even possibly begin here? I think we have to start off with WrestleMania 35. First of all, the first ever women's main event of a WrestleMania against Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey for both the Raw and SmackDown women's titles. And not only did she main event this WrestleMania, but she overcame 2 of the most powerful women in the history of the women's division to become the first ever double women's champion in the WWE. Also, speaking of first, we have the first woman on the cover of a WWE game, which I think really cemented her as the top dog in the WWE at the time. Becky Lynch went on to hold the Raw women's title for 398 days, and only then did she vacate it due to pregnancy. As for the SmackDown women's title, she would drop that title to Charlotte Flair at Money in the Bank after holding it for 41 days. With an impeccable win-loss ratio and arguably the most most dominant woman throughout 2019, alongside of course her overall charisma and in-ring ability. Becky Lynch will absolutely be comfortably making it all the way to the top of the S tier. Carmella. After winning the Money in the Bank in 2017 and cashing in 2018, 2019 was honestly a pretty slow year for Carmella. While she didn't compete in any memorable singles matches, she was a part of some of the most historic matches in 2019, such as the Women's Elimination Chamber match, the Women's Royal Rumble, and the most stacked Survivor Series card we have ever seen in the history of the company. I mean, please Triple H, you have to bring that back at least one time. A super entertaining superstar, however, with another banger theme song, but just a bit of a slow year for Carmella. Despite winning the majority of her matches, I'm gonna be putting Carmella in the B tier. Charlotte Flair. I mean, can things really get any better? 2019 was such an interesting year for Charlotte Flair that she was both incredibly successful, but at the same time had one of the worst years of her career. And I know this does sound kind of crazy to say out loud, but let me explain why. First off, let's start off with the good. She was a 3-time SmackDown Women's Champion, main evented WrestleMania, and had 9 pay-per-view matches. Hearing all of that, it sounds like she legitimately had a better year than any other superstar on the roster, right? Well, it turns out those 3 title reigns lasted a combined total of 16 days, consisting of a 12-day reign, a 4-day reign, and a barely minute-long reign after Bayley cashed in on her at Money in the Bank. And to make things even worse, she lost a whopping 100 matches in 2019. I do certainly recognize though, most of these losses were in high-stake matches, and they were essentially using the insane amount of star power that Charlotte Flair had at this time to put the other women over on the roster, and just in general elevate the women's division at the time. With all that being said, and considering the amount of good things she did for the women's division in the year of 2019, I think I am really gonna have to put Charlotte Flair up in that S tier. Dana Brooke. Okay, finally onto a more regular note, and that's me being very lenient. We have Dana Brooke, someone who has just consistently been mediocre in the WWE. And honestly, I just don't think there's much to talk about with her, so I'm gonna be putting her in the C tier. Ember Moon. And honestly, this ranking may come as a bit of a surprise to you guys, but I think Ember Moon is one of the most talented and underrated women to ever be in the WWE. In ring, maybe the single best on the roster in 2019. Ember Moon was just her. After an absolutely dominant performance as NXT Women's Champion throughout 2018, Ember Moon kept that momentum going since her main roster debut in April 2018, with a pretty flawless win-loss record between 2018 and 2019. Some notable moments for Ember Moon in 2019 include being in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, facing Bayley at SummerSlam in 2019 for the SmackDown Women's title, and lasting 52 minutes in the Women's Royal Rumble. Certainly one of the better superstars on the 2019 roster, but sadly just nothing to show for it. Although I really feel like she still just about makes it into that A tier for me. Kairi Sane. Starting off the year down in NXT and making her main roster debut in April of 2019, she had a very strong first 8 months on the main roster. The highlight of course being winning the tag team titles with Asuka in October and going on to hold those for an astounding 180 days. Similarly to Ember Moon, I think Kairi Sane is one of the most underrated in the ring. Even to this day, I think every single match of hers is always a classic. I'm actually going to be putting Kairi Sane right up there with Ember Moon in the A tier. Liv Morgan. I mean, we have to talk about the win-loss record first. 2 wins to 44 losses. That's a 95.7% loss record. Given a huge part of these rankings are based on year performance alone, this is really not looking good for Liv Morgan. I will say though, I have always been a Liv Morgan fan, and she was actually pretty good in the ring at this time. Of course, part of the Riott Squad at this point, but honestly, she had zero momentum both as a singles and tag competitor. I love Liv Morgan, but I'm gonna have to be putting her in the C tier for 2019. Lacey Evans. 2019 was honestly the peak of Lacey Evans' career, although her record certainly does not show that. Lacey Evans is somebody who has taken nothing but L's throughout her career, with an average win percentage of only 34% in her career. I've never really been much of a Lacey Evans fan. Her character's never really been that appealing to me, but I will say she is actually pretty decent in the ring, and also has a decent entrance song, honestly. I'm really stuck between between B and C tier for Lacey Evans, but I'm gonna opt for a high C tier just based off her terrible performance in 2019. Lana. Who can forget Lana in 2019? There's nothing like meeting the love of your life in a WWE ring and then getting absolutely obliterated by Liv Morgan and Rusev on your wedding day. Other than that, no singles matches in the year of 2019, and her only TV appearances were the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royale and a mixed 18-man tag team match on Smackdown. Simply because she provided some entertaining TV throughout 2019, I will be sparing her from the F tier and putting her in a very low C tier. Mickie James, the first actual legend on this list so far. However, sadly 2019 was just not the year for Mickie James. Also, why did nobody tell me this? Mickie James has had a professional wrestling match every single year since 1999. I'm genuinely not sure there is any other woman who has come even remotely close to that. Anyways, 2019 was just not the year for Mickie James, with her only TV appearance other than the Royal Rumble being a tag team match with Alexa Bliss against Nia Jax and Tamina to qualify for the Elimination Chamber, which she would go on to lose. Mickie James overall for me is a top tier superstar without a shadow of a doubt, but for 2019 we're gonna have to go for the C tier. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, aka Fire and Desire. Throughout our many various rankings, we've seen many female jobbers. However, we've not yet seen a jobber tag team, and that's exactly where Sonya and Mandy come in. Honestly, not a terrible tag team in retrospect, and they honestly had quite decent in-ring ability, but just not really any character, and I just feel as though they felt a bit inauthentic. Not to mention, of course, the 85% loss record between the two. I'm gonna have to put these two in the C tier. Naomi. Naomi had a kind of okay year in 2019, despite having nothing to really show for it. Most notably, Naomi was in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, however, of course, unsuccessful, but nothing else really stand out from Naomi in this year. Of course, though, not to mention, she was still rocking the coolest entrance and gear out of anyone in the WWE at the time, and of course, not to mention her incredible in-ring ability as well. Certainly not her best ever year though, but I'm going to be putting Naomi in the B tier. Natalya. 2019 was a very slept on year for Natalya, including competing at 6 pay-per-views, including a WrestleMania tag match, the Women's Money in the Bank match, the Women's Royal Rumble, and most notably a singles match at SummerSlam 2019 against Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title, and of course the first ever women's match in the Middle East at Crown Jewel against Lacey Evans. With all of that being said though, I certainly don't think Natalya is a top talent by any means, but she was still pretty good in the ring and a sufficient babyface on the roster. So I'm going to be putting Natalya in the B tier. Nikki Cross. Nikki's year overall started off quite underwhelming until she finally joined forces with Alexa Bliss in May. From there, she would go on to win the tag team titles on Raw in August and hold them for 61 days. I always feel though that if Nikki Cross never had Alexa Bliss, she wasn't really much of an attraction on her own, and I feel as though she's always worked best in factions and tag teams. With all of that being said, despite being a tag team champion, I just really don't think Nikki Cross has really had much appeal as a singles competitor. So for that reason, I'm actually going to be putting Nikki Cross down to the C tier. Nia Jax. After injuring both knees towards the beginning of 2019, we didn't really get to see much from Nia Jax coming off her title reign in 2018. A statistic I certainly find very impressive, however, is that she is the only woman on this list to compete in both a men's match and a female match, which is kind of insane to think about. Men's match aside, however, she did also compete at Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania, both for the tag team titles with Tamina. However, she was unsuccessful on both occasions. Given she was out from that point and wasn't really that interested in 2019 prior to her injury anyways, I'm going to be putting Nia Jax in the C tier. And whilst we're on the topic, we might as well get Tamina out of the way with here. Tamina is someone who also had a pretty terrible year, and in my opinion is just one of the least interesting characters the women's roster has ever produced, and yeah, just not really that impressive in ring either. I'm going to be putting Tamina in the F tier. Up next, we have the other two from the Riott Squad in Sarah Logan and Ruby Riott. Overall, just a terrible year for the Riott Squad in general, and looking back, despite producing some stars, the faction itself was really nothing special. No notable moments, however, and just a half decent gimmick and half decent in-ring ability. I think the best thing to do is just have them join Liv Morgan in the C tier. Zelina Vega. 2019 was really not a good year for Zelina, with only one win, with the only two notable matches being a loss against Becky Lynch and John Cena on the January 1st episode of Smackdown, and another loss to Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch in July on Raw. Honestly, not a terrible talent in ring, but just no singles action whatsoever ever in 2019, and anything she did have was just straight losses. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to put Zelina Vega in the F tier. And finally, we have the superstar that you guys voted as number 1 in 2016 in Sasha Banks. And as I said at the beginning of the video, you guys voting Sasha Banks as number 1 in 2016 currently puts her at the top of the leaderboard with 3 points. Of course, first place getting 3 points, second place getting 2 points, and third place getting 1 point. So of course, after this video, make sure to go check out the current poll for this 2019 video. I'll have 4 options. Whoever you guys vote as number 1 will get 3 points on the leaderboard. But anyways, let's talk about Sasha Banks. As for 2019, certainly not a standout year for singles accomplishments. However, the Boss and Hug connection were one of the absolute best things in the women's division at the time. Of course, claiming the inaugural women's tag titles at Elimination Chamber, Sasha Banks and Bayley would go on to hold the titles for 41 days before dropping them to the Iconics at WrestleMania 35. However, given she didn't win any singles titles in 2019, I don't think I can quite put her up to the S tier. However, we are talking one of the most dominant women's tag teams of all time, and of course one of the best entrance songs of all time, and just an overall superstar in Sasha Banks. I'll be putting Sasha Banks in 2019 in the A tier. Here are the final rankings of every WWE woman on the 2019 roster, and here is the poll that is currently out on the community section of my YouTube channel for this video. Make sure to go and cast your vote before the next video, and of course, if you enjoy these full roster ranking videos, make sure to smash that like button and check out one of these videos next.